Hello, I'm Rachel, and this is an astrology video about the closing Neptune in Pisces cycle. So, over the past couple of weeks, anyone who came for a reading with me either had Moon in Pisces or a planet or moon at the very final degree of Pisces. And this, I kept feeling like I'm giving the same message, and it almost felt like the universe was shouting at me to put a message out about this Neptune cycle and how this may be coming across for yourself, for others, as a pattern that's playing out in people at this moment. So, first of all, let's just have a look at what Neptune is doing. So, we're in October 2024 here. Neptune is retrograde in at the final degrees of Pisces. So it's 28 degrees and then 27 degrees in October. For the whole of November, it's 27 degrees, and then December, 27 degrees retrograde again. So it's a slow moving planet. And then on the 8th of December, Neptune will go direct at 27 degrees and 8 minutes of Pisces. So once it's going in forward motion again, like the ship is going forward, we'll get to go over these points that it's currently going backwards over. Now, Neptune rules many things, including and beliefs and disbelief, illusion and non-illusion, as in the veils and having the veils taken off. So what we are looking at this time is the very slow unfolding and unveiling of untruth to truth, and the very many different perspectives that this can bring in different human beings. So if we just have a look at what happens in 2025, January, we start the year with Neptune at 27 degrees of Pisces the whole month, and then February 28 degrees, March 29 degrees, and on the final day of March, so 31st of March 2025, this is when Neptune begins a whole new cycle at 0 degrees of Aries. By the time we get to a point where people are all guns blazing, I probably shouldn't use that phrase given the state of the world at the minute. Okay, Aries taking initiative, like striking a match, like, by the time we get there, there could be raised anger levels about what has been unseen into what is seen. So it will be like the veils just get ripped away, and people are going, "What? What? How could this be?" And when you come into realizations, whatever that is, and whatever realm that is, whether it's a mental realization, like when you catch yourself and you go, "Oh my gosh, I've actually been saying this thing to myself for years." Oh, it can feel awful. You can go into like a place of devastation at catching yourself and catching the level of self-sabotage that created. Then you need to be in that closure, grief, wrap it up, bring this to conclusion in whatever way feels right for you. I'm Gemini moon, so I have to speak it all away. I'm like giving the eulogy to what is going, to what is closing, to what is ending, because that feels right to me energetically to close off something as it sets sail away, so that we make space for the new. So what I'm saying there is that self realizations can feel awful, you know, seeing yourself as you really are, not as you thought you were. That's really uncomfortable work. That's why doing inner work is very courageous, because it involves sitting with the truth. Um, Now, the truth on a soul level is very different to the truth on a human level. So, truths on human levels, uh, beliefs that you may have been given by others, programming, mental scripts, this is the way life is. Anything that you've been telling yourself and reinforcing, possibly throughout a lifetime or or through a certain point of time, it can feel affronting, difficult, traumatic to sit with the truth of something. You may have been in a relationship that you thought was going swimmingly well, and then something comes to light and you realize that it's not going swimmingly well anymore. And it's like taking off your rose tinted glasses and going, oh, okay. So the dream vision, the romantic vision, didn't actually match the reality. I'm sure we've all been there. That's just one example. And that would be seeing another person as they really are, but it may also involve seeing a previous version of yourself that chose to be with them and making realizations about what you didn't know before that you know now, and making that okay with yourself. So, what might illusions look like? They may be beliefs, they may be spiritual or religious beliefs that you're going through a whole new phase of making realizations about, because there is always another layer of perceptual awareness from which you can view the same situation, or from which you can simply view life. It may be that you're unraveling your own personal creed. As a child growing up in the Church of England, I used to have a real problem with the creed. I actually had quite a fundamental problem, even though I couldn't articulate it and mentally grasp it for myself. I had a fundamental problem with stand up and say what you believe. We already wrote it for you. Did you? How about you ask me? What is this? I had like this real fundamental problem with it. But at the same time, there was this fear based stuff going, Jesus is watching you. Well, I know, because I was a person who could see him. So this was a bit scary. It's like, yeah, I know he's watching. What if I don't say the words in the creed? Does this make me a bad person? This layers and layers of stuff going on. I mean, that takes a while of unraveling, right? And that's just one little example. But coming into your own personal creed, what are you here for? What is the meaning of life on earth? Where are you with yourself at this time? These are big things to grapple with. And in the closing of a cycle, we will be grappling with this and more. Huge, huge things. So, a Neptune cycle is 164 years long. And this means that with it being the end of 2024, we're looking back, you know, minus 164, we're looking back at what was started in the 1860s. Now, in England, there was the second industrial revolution really took off. Now, you may, as I'm saying this, you know, feel free to, if you are enjoying this, feel free to sit down with a notepad and make your own notes. This could spark off loads of thoughts for you. And you know, just take what resonates, discard what doesn't, as always. But when I tune into what the 1860s brought, and there is no accident that this year I moved to a place by the sea that was built in the 1860s, because Life is just constantly mirroring and giving me guidance on what's going on. It's like life is my teacher. I'm the reader of life as well as the writer and liver of it. When we tune into what happened in the 1860s, families started going out and working for some big boss, some male, uh, you know, boss who decided when you worked, how you worked, probably absolutely no health and safety on the job at all. Everything's like factory, production line, churn it out, get into this Victorian state of being, and you're basically like just churning out work like a robot. Um, and it's this repetitive cycle of this is what you're worth because this is what you've been told to do and you must do it or there will be consequences, and in order to do it you do that to get money, and we tell you what your money is, and then you get that money and that's how you live basically. And you have this job which is just over broke, and you then get money to live and pay for your house and your food and just about clothe your family and kids. Um, yeah. So there's probably a lot that over the past 164 years, that pattern has become, um, basically indoctrinated in the Western world. So where do we believe that we are, what you might be, what some people might be, or you might be extracting for yourself, or realizing and unpicking and unraveling might be, what am I worth, what somebody else says that I am worth, or is there a different way of orientating our life on earth? What happened to our own innate divinity, our right to be as a person in this body, in this life, separate from what somebody else says that you have to do for a living? Is that living? Is that a living? So you may be coming to terms with, what am I doing on planet Earth? Who am I being on planet Earth? How is the exchange of energy and gifts and what I have to share? How is that being reciprocated back? And this is, of course, coinciding with Pluto in Capricorn. So Pluto is currently in its final few weeks of its last dip, DIP, for the captions on here, because the last time I said that Pluto was going to dip back into Capricorn, it put DICK on the captions. Thanks for that. So at the same time, Pluto's in Capricorn, and we are working out where others, and it may not be other people, but it may just come through other people, the energy of power imbalance, the energy of control, coercion, all forms of abuse through power imbalance, where those have run rampant in our lives, and we've given our big sacred no to that. And this is where we see so much unraveling and being, well, having its tower moment in Hollywood, in big corporations. We see CEOs leaving in droves. We see people falling from grace, falling from the pedestal that they've been put on at the top of the hierarchical tree. Because we're heading towards the age of Aquarius, so there is no hierarchy. We're all valid and worthy of being in this divine human existence here on Earth. So can we do better? Can we collaborate? Can we be smarter about this? Can we see our fellow human beings as equals? There are some fundamental truths for people to get hold of here. And this leads us back to belief, Neptune. So Neptune's a sneaky little ship, um, with a P on the end. Uh, so Neptune is so filled with illusion and mystery and spirituality and blah, 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 blah. It just kind of sneaks in, it floats in on the tide, like you don't even see it coming. And the next thing is you're acting like a twat and, giving all your spiritual messages online. And then 2 months later, you're like, I don't believe that anymore. What did I say? Because it's kind of sneaky. And Neptune cycles really make us test out our beliefs, but they're not testing them in a laser sharp way. Like Uranus is just boom, now you see it, now you hear it, now you know it. Whereas Neptune's like just coming in on the ship of like delusion and fantasy and romance, and so we don't see it coming, and we can stay under these veils for a long time. Okay, 1968. Anyone born in 1968 has their Chiron round about 29 degrees of Pisces. So you have currently got Neptune in all of its illusion and delusion and romance and fantasy. You've got that sitting on your Chiron. It's asking you, what is your wound of where were you not allowed to be your divine self? Where were you spiritually wounded? Where have you shut down to the point where you just are like so far away from logic that your whole life is like a delusion fest? It's getting you to answer those kinds of questions, probably not phrased that intensely. That was probably a little bit intense there. However, you may have unpicked all of that. You may have done tons of healing. You may have done tons of trauma work. You may have done tons of psychotherapy. You may be really geared to be uncompromisingly truthful and look truth right in the face. Or you might still be swimming in the sea of chaos. And you know what? That might not even come across like chaos. It might not even look like chaos. Maybe the ones who are doing the work look like they're swimming in chaos. The ones who are not doing any work, they're the ones who are like strict, uncompromisingly, every door, every chamber's closed, not available for an outside perspective. Thank you very much. Those are the ones you've got to kind of worry about, really, because when those veils are lifted, it's going to be really painful. Whew. So, there's another bunch of people who have been coming to me recently, and by the way, I'm not talking about, I'm not talking about people who are blinkered and with all their chambers shut and who haven't done any inner work. Those people don't come for readings. Those people are doing their day in, day out same job, like they're working on the 1866 production line factory, but wherever they are in the world right now. There's another gang of people who came into me recently. Hello, I love you. You are Moon in the later degrees of Pisces. Hello, you're amazing. Now, these people have raised their frequency, the ones who I've met, have raised their frequency to that of spiritual soaring, heights, higher heart healing. They have done quite a lot of unraveling, usually. There may be certain things they're not seeing. There's some things that we're all not seeing, right? There's an infinite layer of more layers to take off, more invisible layers of the onion ring that we haven't managed to feel or name yet. Okay, because everybody's stemming something. We just haven't got there yet. You know, the fact that life on Earth is timed and unraveled so slow compared with what we know on the higher planes, then it gives us that chance to unravel in our own time as we're just living life. Like all of life is a dance and a poem and a mystery and this beautiful unraveling. And when we get to a particular point where we're like, okay, I'm ready, then the thing that you were ready to see and hear and know will come through. And that's my articulation of how this works. Okay. Um, so the people who have their moon at the position where Neptune currently is, what I am going to say to all of you is be super mindful as to whether you are able to detach from other people's stuff. Because if you are moon in Pisces, you're probably highly capable of being very, very intuitive, understanding others, very empathic, emotionally feeling what others feel. And it reminds me to say, because I commented on somebody's comment on my post this morning, I feel really lucky that I don't have that. I don't actually experience other people's emotions, and I feel quite glad of it. That just detach a bit, because it helps me to be able to see what's going on. But I can often see if another person is attaching to somebody else's emotions. Now, if you are moon, which is a water planet, moon in Pisces, which is the whole ocean, you're going to have an enormous amount of love and compassion and ability to travel like water travels into every crevice, but not only to travel into every crevice, that's more of a seeping energy. You're going to have the ability to blast the whole thing open. Water is just incredibly powerful. So, so, so powerful. You know this, you know it is. And that level of traveling into all of the collective emotion puts you at a wonderful emotional advantage to be able to really emotionally feel what patterns are being closed now. So I have a good friend who I am working with and in some other groups with, and she is extremely good at being able to hear and feel in another woman when a woman is vouching for herself and she says something that she's been taking on board. And this lady will just say, oh, well, it's not a wonder that you do, because women have been suppressed in these ways for all these years. And you go, oh my goodness. And that reminder that we are living out these collective patterns is wonderful. We are. I can't help living out the pattern of a white woman in England because that's what I am. That's what I incarnated as. It doesn't mean it's the sum total and whole of what I am and all I ever have been. Of course not. As a person who can see and know my past lives and what I did in the in-between life space, of course I know myself as more than this one lifetime as Rachel. Thank God. But it doesn't mean I'm not living this lifetime as Rachel now. Of course I am. And I'm totally indoctrinated by what it has felt like to own and live all parts of this story, this life. And as we go through life, we've picked up so many beliefs that maybe weren't ours, but we just picked them up like totally unconscious. It's just like happening all the time. And it, you know, it can look like accepting lower pay because you're a woman, and in most workplaces women get paid less. Not that we have to, but it because it's the status quo, and it's been the same in so many places, we have a choice. We either, the first step is notice it, notice how we feel about it, choose whether we do something about it, choose whether we feel okay and or not and fight back, choose how we're going to do something or take action. Yeah. And that's just one example. Now, another thing is the role of the woman. Now, in Victorian Britain, in Victorian times, so going back to the 1860s when this cycle first began, the cycle we're closing in this few months, the cycle we're closing between now and March, when this first was set in the 1860s, what was the role of the woman then? So a woman may have been basically a baby making machine for the family. May have found her worth through being a wife and a mother. It is quite interesting that the relationship that I've been in these past 3 years, we actually were married. Like I knew this from the first day onwards. We were actually married and had kids in that time period. I mean, you can't make it up, could you, really? But anyway, closing off this cycle, closing off this period of time in a different way. Yeah, it's a really interesting one. But what was the role of a woman in that time? Did a woman's worth just be as a wife and a mother? And what was the grief associated with that? What was the toll that that took on her whole being, on the person she knew herself to be as an eternal soul? And infant mortality was very high in those Victorian times. So if babies were at risk of dying, there's that huge fear, that massive fear that women have around, oh, can I do enough to protect my babies? Well, in the society that we've created, rarely is the answer, and that may play out in many, many different forms. Fear when your babies are ill, fear that you're taking your story through a family court, fear that you couldn't keep the family unit together, but ultimately our generation have tended to favour personal healing over staying in dead end relationships. Therefore, a lot of trauma has been hauled through family courts. And what are the beliefs of the family courts? And then you run into the whole, oh, what about everything else, social services and blah blah blah, police, blah blah blah, all of the different authorities that may be conscripted in to reenact these bullshit stories, dragging something through the court. I mean, how many families have been through the court because a grown-up adult couple who chose to bring new life into this world couldn't agree on how to split up their time with their children, as though the children are fucking pie. I mean, I'm laughing and it's not funny. It's really not funny. But you know what needs dismantling? All of it. All of it. All of the beliefs everywhere. And come come April next year, those who haven't seen this already and seen the parts that they've played, it might feel really uncomfortable when you start to see new layers. It always does. Healing's always like horrible, isn't it? When you realise, I had to make a realisation that for 12 years I kept my significant clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, I kept it all completely buried. I mean, stuff would still fly in, but I was like hearing and seeing, but also in denial. That like my biggest vibration was shut down and denial, because I decided that it was too scary to actually be me and show up with spiritual gifts in this world. It was simply too scary. So I shut it all down. And it's been a long road of reclamation to heal from the faulty human programming, and to reclaim the soul level divinity piece. That's a big deal, and it forms a big bulk of my work. Now, back to Neptune. Neptune rules beliefs, spirituality, mysticism, occult, intuition, higher love. So we call it the higher octave of Venus. So it's like love with bells on. It's genuine love for all your all humans. And that's not to be all. That's not bypassing. That's not love and light. That's if I accept myself as a flawed human being who is fully divine and fully human, then that same creed has to be applied to all others. It's more along those lines. Where was I? I've almost lost myself. Jesus popped in, and I'm like, I've forgotten what I was saying. Totally lost what I was saying. Oh, I'm just like on the Jesus line at the minute. Okay. Neptune. The higher perspectives of Neptune. Yes, it's love for all of humanity. It's love for animals. It's love for the earth. I mean, I sometimes get a little bit prickly about when people say New Earth. I'm like, we're not getting another planet. We're supposed to look after this one. And, you know, that's not me being funny or suggesting that anybody stops using that language. It's just a thought process that I have. Who knows where we're going? Who knows what the bigger plan is? Who knows what the divine order of things are? Neptune rules all manner of not being able to see, not being willing to see, or feeling like it's too much. And often that can play out as rigidity, narcissistic behaviours, alcoholism, depression, any form of addiction, any form of masking. It's almost like knocking yourself unconscious and saying, I just refuse. I literally refuse. The shutters are coming down, and you're just like swimming in a whirlpool of just fantasy on repeat. You will find a lot of amazing musicians, novelists, fantasists, basically people who live in a dream world and a fantasy land. And it can be very beautiful, and it can be wonderful if that person is channeling that through music or poetry or a novel. But there's a form of fantasy there. And if that fantasy then extends to real life, then there can be all sorts of layers of not seeing yourself or not being in your own truth. So that's another thing to watch out for with Neptune. Also, it can be true that, and I do believe this is true, that a lot of people with addictions, and maybe even that have been confined or medicated or even in prison, because this is all 12th house stuff, which is ruled by the realm of Pisces, which is ruled by the planet Neptune. So it's all relevant here. It represents secrets and everything that is hidden from us, and the unconscious and subconscious realms, and everything that's held in confinement. So if you think about a prison or a hospital, a hospice, the people in those places are being held in confinement. Okay, so I know that those things are very different. Obviously, what is being held in confinement is a prison. In a prison is supposed to be for the safety of everybody else. These people have to be confined and curtailed. Very different to say what you've got with a hospice, where these people are at end of life and they need to be cared for with compassion and appropriate palliative care, but it's still in a confined specific place. Now, if we take that confinement to the confinement and constriction that we can find ourselves in just as a human being, it's any time that you say you can't do something. It's the beliefs that stop you from being and doing and saying and believing absolutely anything that you want to. If you have a dream, if you can see it with your mind's eye, it can be done. How is that not real? And this is why a lot of people are really, really tapping into hypnosis, into subconscious work, into being able to access the soul. I call it the eternal soul. Everybody else seems to call it higher self, but okay. It's just because I did so much work on my own spiritual unraveling alone. My guides were just like, do not involve anyone else. So I came to a lot of conclusions just that were my conclusions, and I'm really grateful. I'm grateful to you all. Honestly, believe me, even though I was like, let me have companionship. They're like, no, you're supposed to do this alone. So, tapping into your eternal self, your eternal soul. She or he knows everything. And this is why it's so powerful to do work in that space. Because you can really shift your reality from that place. And a lot of people a lot of people are already working in this way and here to show us what's possible in this new era where old disbeliefs will be shattered and old illusions will be shattered by the number of people who are here to share what is possible. And it will be amazing. It will be amazing. I can't wait to see what everyone has to share and offer at that time. And I do believe it's next year. So this has been a long video on the closing of this Neptune cycle. Thank you for watching, and I really appreciate your attention, your comments. If you found value in what I've said here, I am going to ask you to operate from a place of truth and authenticity and your own integrity. If I've offered you something here and you gained from that, I am going to ask that you like this video, that you offer me a comment to know that you've watched, and specifically if you would give me the feedback of which pieces resonated for you. I would love that. And if you know that you benefited in a different way and you would like to offer a monetary exchange, then I have put my link below so that you are able to make a donation if my work has been of value to you. There is no obligation whatsoever to do that, because I am happy that the people who need this, who cannot make a donation right now, are able to receive my messages in whatever way feels good for them, so that this is me giving back, giving to humanity. And to anyone who chooses to listen. And I would love it if you would repay me with a like, a share, a comment, a subscribe, and even more so to the people who are able to donate. I thank you for that. So thank you for listening to this. I will be back with videos about the other planetary movements very soon.